With one fell swoop, the Rebbe in the Sikha has basically responded to majority of the 8 questions posed earlier regarding Rashi's commentary to the words Vayigash Avraham, in that the thrust of the Vayigash Avraham is not what Avraham actually did, but rather the phrase connotes a situation of a change in mindset on the part of Avraham, in which he entered into a dialogue with Hashem regarding the impending destruction of the city of Sodom. In making this change from what Avraham did to what Avraham was prepared to do, we have a response, firstly, to question 8 and also to question 1, in which we asked that the word Vayigash has a default translation, the physical movement from position A to position B. On the surface at least, there was no need for Rashi to offer 3 alternative options for the Vayigash Avraham. By the same token, we can also respond to question 3 as to if we are to go ahead and reinterpret the Vayigash, the concluding statement that Olechol Elu Nichnas Avraham, that Avraham used all 3 methods to save the city of Sodom. This information is clearly stated in the text throughout this perek, and therefore the concluding statement of Rashi is superfluous. One merely needs to read the Chumash text to realize that this was the case. Once again, in response, the thesis of the Rebbe is that Vayigash Avraham is not what Avraham did, but rather what Avraham was prepared to do. The fact that he actually used all 3 approaches does not reflect a preparedness, emphasis on preparedness, from the very outset to use all 3 approaches. That there was a change in mindset, the nichnas rather than the nigash, which was a point made with question 5, in which we ask that given the fact that these 3 approaches are reflected in the narrative of Bereshit 18, why does Rashi need to refer to Pasukim throughout Tanakh to support the thesis that Vayigash is used in a concept of Milchama, Piyus, and Tfilah? The Nichnas thesis of the Rebbe will also justify Rashi's introduction, that the word Vayigash incorporates the 3 activities of Milchama, Piyus, and Tfilah. On the surface, this introduction would appear to be somewhat superfluous, in that one merely needs to read the narrative to see that Avraham used all 3 approaches. And in response, it could be argued that in light of the fact that we are dealing with the Nichnas concept, what Avraham was prepared to do rather than what Avraham actually did, one needs to use outside evidence that the word Vayigash connotes Milchama, Piyus, and Tfilah. Sources from Shmuel Bet, from Bereshit 44, and from Malachim Aleph. And therefore, once we have established that the word Vayigash incorporates Milchama, Piyus, and Tfilah, Rashi must then apply these 3 options to the case of Avraham, that Nichnas, that there was a change in mindset, that from the very outset, Avraham was prepared to use any one of the 3 approaches. Hence, the concluding statement would not be superfluous. There is, however, a challenge that one can mount against the Rebbe's thesis, and that is that if we will read into the word nichnas that from the very outset Avraham was prepared to use any one of 3 approaches, one might argue that Avraham was prepared to use only one approach, the approach of Milchama, as evidenced by the Pasuk, Ha'af tispeh tzadik im rasha. And then, seeing that this approach did not work, Avraham decided to adopt the Piyus approach. And when that did not work, he resorted to Tfilah. In other words, the Vayigash Avraham, the change in mindset, applied and was limited to the willingness to enter into a verbal Milchama with God. To reject this alternative approach from one of 3 to all 3, Rashi opens his commentary from the very outset with the 3 strategic options that can be read into the word Vayigash. We are, however, not concerned with the actual definition for the word Vayigash, but what Avraham was prepared to do on behalf of the city of Sodom. And for this reason, the heading is Vayigash Avraham, indicating that the focus here is the change of mindset that took place on the part of Avraham, not the definition to the word Vayigash.